So I'm making my Sunday afternoon apiary assessment. Right now we are right in the middle of a honey flow. And these boxes are filling up, so I have to decide on when I'm going to start extraction. And with that, I have to decide how many boxes to put on these hives. This is a common question I get from a lot of beekeepers. So I'll just kind of step you through just a small little process of what I do, just to help judge what's going on, what I'm seeing, and what I should be anticipating. As of right now, I can't start pulling honey until next Monday. The reason for that is, well, because of reasons other than the business. So the earliest I can start pulling is on Monday, which is the 16th. It's a little bit early for me anyways. But these boxes are filling up, so I'm targeting the 16th. Okay, so what I'm doing is, so what we did earlier is we shook the queen down. We got to wait 3 weeks after that, so that timeline matches up nicely. But we've also had thirds, fourths. Those are filling up, and I generally have a rule. It's a box a week rule, and we're in a good strong honey flow. These bees can fill a box per week. We had to judge the colony size to be able to determine that. Some are a little bit slower than the quicker ones, but we have to assess these colonies to be able to make sure they have adequate space to store all this honey flow as it comes in, because we don't want to miss any of it. So we had them fourths last week. I was way out to the lake. I had my guys go around and stack fifths on most of them. So I have 1,200 hives going on. When you include my nukes, I'm pushing 1,400. I'm not even sure anymore. I can pull 500 hives a week. Okay, that's what my capability is. So what I do is I take my apiary and if, let's say, rough numbers, if I have 1,500 hives, I divide that into 500 hives per week. That means it's going to take me 3 weeks to get through all 1,500. So I have a little bit less than that, but all the same, it takes me 3 weeks. The first week, we're getting to them quicker than the last week, right? So the first week, we're going to box them up a little bit tight. We want them to use that space. We want them to fill it right up so we're not pulling empty boxes on the first pull. The second week, that's a 1 week further than the first week's pull. So you can pretty much count a box on that, right? So we are a little more generous when we box up those hives. Typically, we gave them all fives. The third week, that's 2 weeks. That's, 2 more boxes, you get a box and a half more. So we box those guys up pretty generously. And I'm standing in my yard right now. This is one of the yards that I'm scheduled to pull in the first week. So I'm just going to show you what I'm looking at and what to gauge. I've had them put fifths on because there's a pretty strong flow going on. And I'll just show you kind of what I'm seeing here. So I'm just going to show you the staging in some of my hives here. And just show you what I'm seeing. So this hive here is in fourths. This hive here, the crew is put into fifths. We're pulling honey in 1 week from today in this yard. So I'll just show you what I'm looking at right now and what I expect to see in a week's time. So in this colony, we have bees actively working to the top, working right across the 9 frames, actively storing nectar up to the top. But there isn't a lot of honey stored in the top box here yet. So we look down into the third, and this third is about 3/4 full of honey. So not a lot of cappings yet. I'll just pull a frame and I'll show you. Don't have smoke with me, but here is a full frame of honey, not cured yet, there's no cappings at all. This extends right out to the outer frames. So this box is nicely filling. It's not going to take long to finish off this third box. And we'll have them move into the fourth. So it'll take them a week to finish that off, and then nicely get this box full for next week. What I'm gauging is I don't want this top box like completely plugged, because that usually tells me that I lost production. I want to pull with this top box about 3/4 full, so I know there's a little bit of space yet. It's not as efficient as having a plugged box, but at the same time I want to capture all that honey crop, all that honey flow coming in. So by having just a little bit of leftover space on the top as I pull these boxes, it kind of reassures me that I didn't leave any honey in the field. So we look at this colony, and the crew put fifths on this one, and these bees are actively filling this top box full of nectar. They're working right across the top. This frame's full of nectar. The outer frames aren't quite worked on yet, but there's at least 5 or 6 frames in here that are actively being stored with nectar. I look down in the fourth, and this fourth looks like the same as the third did in this other colony. This fourth's getting some cappings in the top here. Not just starting. Here's a frame where they're starting to cap on the outside. These frames are filling up quite nicely. Getting some weight in there. There's a lot of honey in there. Looking down into this third, and this third is pretty much full of honey. Still working their way up. So in about a week's time, these will all be filled up and cured, and they'll be nicely on to the fifth here. And like I say, this top box I don't want completely full. I want them nicely filling it up, but not plugged, so I know that they had lots of space to store all that incoming nectar. So I'm just going to step through a few colonies here just to see what's going on. So when I'm going through, I'm a week away, I'm just taking a peek. I'm just double checking my crew's assessment to see if they're on the money or not. See the bees right across the top bars there, and it's hard to tell from a video here, but I can tell from up here that they're preparing that comb, so they're actively storing nectar in those combs. So they assessed this one as the fifth correctly. So what I'm assuming now is this box to be mostly stored honey, and it is. What I can see is big fat frames being filled out, and this box will be, I assume this box here will be capped over this coming week, and the bees will be moving up into that top box to store that fresh nectar coming in. So the crew assessed this colony correctly. There's probably 10 or 15 pounds of honey on the top here already. Just take a peek, and this colony too, the bees are nicely spread across the top. Kind of see it from the bottom too here. They're actively storing a lot of honey in the top box here. I'm looking down into the bottom. It's nice to pick up boxes and feel that weight. Looking down into the fourth here, and I'm not sure if you can see, but there is honey actively stored in all the frames on the top here. Looks like they've just about filled that box out. They got another week's work on that, and they'll have that plugged up. Let's see what's underneath this. Oh yeah, this box is heavy. And this box is practically all. There's a lot of cappings going on in there. This side hasn't been capped yet, but this side has. Just starting to cap. So they're just starting to cap the edges there. Beautiful. So this box is pretty much done. This one will be done this week, and they will be on to the 5th. There's a lot of cues that the bees give you to let you know whether or not they're comfortably producing for you, or if they're going into swarm mode. Now, when I worked through these colonies, what I noticed was bees working all throughout, evenly across the top bars, actively storing nectar. I'm looking at the entrances of these hives. These guys are fanning. If you look at all the fanning going on there to dry down the incoming nectar, and just busy, in and out busy, actively working. Now these colonies are pretty big colonies. They're growing. They're going to go through another hatch rate shortly. There's going to be a lot of bees in these hives. We don't want them to swarm. Right now they're telling me that they're not even thinking of swarming. They're in work mode. And that's really reassuring for me to see. Just little cues like that you're looking for. When a colony starts to prepare to swarm, they tend to, or I find that it seems like they tend to shut down. Their bees are just hanging around. There's not a lot of work going on up top. And yeah, they're just preparing to divide that colony off to start a new one somewhere else. But when you see a colony actively working, spending all of its attention towards that honey crop out in the field, more than likely those guys are working towards keeping himself together and producing that massive honey crop you want. So I'm just going to pull these guys down just to take a look at the brood nest and just to see what's going on down there. It's full of honey. This third's full of honey. Beautiful frames. Just starting to get capped over. Full box of honey here. This box is practically capped. They're backfilling around the emerging brood nest. Oh, we go down. Go down into the brood nest. Take a look underneath. And I'm not seeing any preparations for swarming. I can't really tell much on the camera there. I'll just put them back together, take a look at what's going on. Forgot to bring the smoker with me, so they're just a little bit riled up. Pull a frame and see what's going on here. Beautiful laying pattern. Love it. Larvae, eggs. There's no backfilling going on. I'm not going to dig too deep into these guys. These guys are massive. They've got another full frame of brood here. Pull one more frame out. Queen's doing quite well. This guy's got some pollen, some nectar in, eggs. So I'm counting brood frames right across here. Here's a supersedure cell going on. And a virgin walking around. So it looks like these guys in the middle of a queen replacement. So she's going to find that old queen. That old queen's still laying. I'm just going to close these guys up to let them take care of whatever is going on inside here. I'm looking all through here. This frame is just full of larvae and fresh eggs. Standing straight up, these are fresh eggs in here. So the old queen is either just being killed off or she's in the hunt. I'm not worried about that virgin running around to swarm this colony off because I'm looking in the front. They're actively working, and all these boxes have bees actively working inside here. So I'd call that a queen replacement. Just the way I like it. So I'm going to put them back together. I'm going to, out of curiosity, I'm going to mark them and come back next week just to see if indeed it was a supersedure and if they successfully were able to switch those queens over. There's a lot that goes on inside these colonies that we're not aware of. We can only do so much. We can set the hives up, and then we basically have to let them do what they want to do. And yeah, sometimes it's swarming. It's out of our hands. A lot of the time it's just queen replacement. That just helps rejuvenate that nest and carry it forward. These guys are producing me like 4 boxes of honey right now. So I'm just going to put them back together, let them get back to work. Hopefully replace that queen successfully, get her out and mated, and then I'll come back next week, hopefully to, or maybe in a week and a half. I'll give her some time, and I'll see a fresh reinstated brood nest inside this colony.